Okay. Today we're going to talk about potato industry, all kinds of things made out of potatoes. The most important issue for all potato products, Kashrus wise, is whether they need Bishul Yisroel or not. And in short, if things need Bishul Yisroel, usually that means is we can't give hashgacha to them. Okay, it's hard to make things Bishul Yisroel in factories. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it makes a big difference. And often it means is basically you're not going to be able to give hashgacha. And at the same time, there's a lot of things I'm going to tell you about today where
is it a specific type of potato product that's hard?
No, anything that needs Bishul Yisroel is automatically has a certain complication to it. Someone's got to be involved in that cooking. That makes so if the factory is around the corner is one thing, but there usually will no place. Also, there's a lot of things you can hear about today of things where CRC and other national hashgachas are makel and don't require Bishul Yisroel, and therefore give hashgacha to these types of things, while some of the other hashgachas, I'll say the Hamish hashgachas, will either because they hold in din they have to, or they hold that they have a mashgiach there anyhow for their production, so they have a guy making Bishul Yisroel anyhow, and that'll be a difference.
CRC wouldn't give hashgacha to I know the concept of industrial factory essentially, but does the OU have on green beans, but the canned potatoes, the little round canned potatoes, I think.
We're going to talk about canned potatoes. It's one of the things we're going to talk about. Okay, so often if it needs Bishul Yisroel, it would be very difficult to do it. But again, sometimes I think that's on what we call it a Hamish hashgacha will be Bishul Yisroel, either because they hold in sheet that they have to be, like they'll disagree, or because they have a person there anyhow. They say, come on, the guy's the mashgiach there anyhow. Mashgiach there anyhow. So mashgiach anyhow. So we might as well make it Bishul Yisroel. Okay. So I'm going to go at least in what in my mind is from the simplest, the most straightforward things to the most complicated things. Okay, the first one is IQF potatoes. IQF potatoes means is they take a potato. Companies literally take a potato and they bake it or they cook it and then they freeze it. Okay, sometimes whole or sometimes cut up into wedges and pieces like that. Okay, so those seem pretty straightforward. They need Bishul Yisroel. They're not nefachai. Those seem pretty straightforward that they need Bishul Yisroel. So some people said no, maybe it doesn't need Bishul Yisroel, because when you freeze it, it reverses some of the cooking that gets done during the baking that happens. And if so, they go from being fully edible to being not fully edible. And the person who buys it, the Jewish person who's going to buy it afterwards, will finish off the cooking. The Ramah says that if a Yid finishes off the cooking, he can make it something that was usher as Bishul Akam, he could undo that. He can make it into Bishul Yisroel. Okay, that was the thinking. There are those who thought like that. And it comes from Avkas Rachel, a Jew from the Beis Yosef, who says that he was talking about rice. He says that if the guy cooked it and made a Bishul Akam, and then the Yid, and then it became undone, the cooking that he made became undone to the point that it's not edible anymore, then when the Yid cooks it, he can make it edible. So think about what I just said.
What's the example though? Of cooking being undone, quote unquote undone.
The Beis Yosef's case, I think it was very dried out. Somehow it made it become undone.
I can give an example.
Okay.
I don't know if you're talking about French fries yet, but I can tell the difference. I think I tell the difference between whatever that company is, Ready Cut, whatever it is, that's not frozen, and someplace that has a bag of frozen stuff. The freezing, because of the water content, I think, has an effect. So it's not. To me, it doesn't taste as good as.
So you made an assumption that the other ones the frozen ones were already fully cooked. That you assumed that, and now you said, "Oh, now when I taste it, doesn't taste fully cooked anymore." I'm not.
No, it's not that.
Tasting the difference is not the same as reversing cooking.
It's the material itself. When the water freezes, it has an effect on the potato.
Okay, so I'll tell you what happened. So we tried these. Okay, we took them and defrosted them. I mean, not cook them again. You're supposed to reheat them. Just defrosted them, and they taste 100% perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with them. So, in other words, when it's the fully cooked, the baking, the freezing didn't do anything, didn't undo any of the cooking. This and that. But I was just saying in the Beis Yosef,
Yeah, it may minimize the quality, but It didn't take off the cooking.
Correct. So I just for to put it on the side for a second, that the Beis Yosef doesn't hold of what the Ramah holds, that if the Yid finishes off the cooking. So in the Beis Yosef's case, it had to become completely unedible. Okay, just for the cheshbon of it. Okay. Anyhow, so
doesn't affect anything.
What do you say?
It doesn't change anything.
What doesn't?
Okay, by him, it has to be completely unedible.
Had become completely edible, right? Just for the svar of it, right? Or just a piece of information. Okay. Anyhow, okay. So those baked potatoes need to be Bishul Yisroel. Okay. Those seem to me the simplest ones. Okay. And the next group is French fries and.
Well, I guess the question is, in those cases, if indeed the quality is minimized, would that be served by a shulchan aruch?
Those kind of things usually don't make a difference. And that's when something is basically it's a baked potato. So if it's made exactly like this and like that, that's what usually make the difference. A little difference between the quality like that. Okay, so now the
like 1/3 cooked meat, we're never going to be able to shulchan aruch.
Right.
Nobody said you don't say that it doesn't need. It's still also Bishul Yisroel.
okay. Now to move to next group is for a different day. Okay, French fries and potato chips. Okay, so they are sliced potatoes that are deep fried. Okay, sliced potatoes are just deep fried. And just before we get to the Bishul Yisroel of it, you should know there are companies that actually still use animal fat for them. Surprisingly, and lots of them have seasonings on them. So hashgacha wise, I know we're mainly talking about Bishul Yisroel, but hashgacha wise, they need hashgacha, of course, to make sure there isn't animal fat, and to make sure kalim wise, especially with seasonings. Okay, but for Bishul Yisroel, so most people take the position that since they don't need Bishul Yisroel because they're not Eila Shulchan Aruch. Okay, it's like a prime example of something that's not Eila Shulchan Aruch. And others argue potato chips and French fries.
You put it on a salad.
What do you say?
Put it on a salad.
Yeah, so it's such that's such like a minimal use of the thing. Overall, potato chips are potato chips. I mean, they're not Eila Shulchan Aruch. So some people said that, well, since there's a way to make potatoes that are Eila Shulchan Aruch, you can make baked potatoes that are Eila Shulchan Aruch. So mamela all. Mamela, all potatoes should need Bishul Yisroel. Big crowd today.
Yeah, salad crowd.
Just I'm sorry, I gave that the wire.
I want that.
So there are people who say like that. Most people reject that and they say no, it doesn't make a difference. Each thing you have to look at how you cooked it. It doesn't make a difference whether, in theory, could you make potatoes that are Eila Shulchan Aruch. Okay, there's some who take a more nuanced approach to that. Again, I told you most assume that you have to look at the way the food is prepared. Some take a more nuanced version. They say,
from the Ramah, right?
what do you say?
They bring it from the Ramah by Beit on top of it.
That's a question. Right? I'm not actually getting into that whole shiloh, but I'm just mentioning there is such a shiloh. Yes, Beitzim is one of the questions about it. But there's some people who say like this. They'll say it doesn't depend on. It's not like if a potato could become Eila Shulchan Aruch, then all potato things have to be Bishul Yisroel. They say but if this way of cooking, I mean, if in frying is there a way to make it Eila Shulchan Aruch? Not in all ways of making the potatoes, okay? Or is there in baking is there a way to make it? Then we class them together. This shiloh about whether something that if there's a way to make the food Eila Shulchan Aruch, we should require everything to be Bishul Yisroel, is most famously relevant to tuna fish, because tuna steaks, that means a broiled piece of tuna is Eila Shulchan Aruch. Tuna fish like that you have in a can is not Eila Shulchan Aruch. So that's one of the reasons. That's a better reason why tuna fish doesn't need Bishul Yisroel. There's another reason also, but that's the better reason. That's a simpler reason why it doesn't need Bishul Yisroel. Okay. Canned salmon is not.
Isn't that a better example than the tuna? Because the tuna you have the steaming, right?
Tuna as steamed also. Yes. Okay.
Salmon doesn't have the steaming, so
yes.
It's only because of it.
Okay, so that's fine. Same idea. Yes. Okay.
Tuna fish is now Shulchan Aruch. That's
broiled tuna is Eila Shulchan Aruch, but
Canned tuna,
cooked tuna is not Eila Shulchan Aruch.
cooked tuna fish. What do you serve it as? I mean, a bris, so on.
Do you serve it as a right?
And a bris.
Right, hagufa, and that a bris is not Shulchan Aruch. Right. So you could take a different position. You could say that even that's considered. If you think that even that's Shulchan Aruch, then yes.
I think that clear that accepted. Tuna
Right.
fish.
Except that it's canned tuna. Most people assume like that. Most people think that a bris is not considered shochem lachem. You're right. I'm biased because I came in with that assumption. You're right. I'm sorry. Okay. Just as in passing is that the potatoes. I'm going to talk in 1 second about other ones, but so far we talked about IQF potatoes and potato chips and French fries. Those are all whole potato products, and the bracha on them obviously is hadama. Okay, just a slice of a potato. Okay, the bracha is hadama. We're going to talk about in a second. Maybe I should have said this then. Pringles, which are made from. They look like potatoes, but they're not made from potatoes. They're made from what we're going to talk about in a second. They're made from instant potatoes, originally.
A lot of potatoes.
What did you say?
Instant potatoes.
It's not from
No.
potatoes.
I said they're not from potatoes. They look like potatoes. They look like they were sliced out of a potato, but they're not really sliced out of a potato. They're made from an instant potato, which I'm going to talk to you about in a second. So Rebelsky said that originally Ramesha held that the bracha was shahakal. Okay, he originally held it was shahakal because as instant things that are broken apart to the point that you can't see it anymore are considered, don't lose that bracha, they go down to being shahakal. But with time, he changed his mind and said that no, since it's such a, I'm not exactly sure what this means, it's such a normal way to eat potatoes, that mamela, it keeps its bracha. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but that's what he said in the end. In fact, this CRC website says that you should make hadam on it based on that.
On Pringles?
On Pringles, yeah.
From them also had that.
That what?
Hadam.
Okay.
Instant mashed potatoes would be the same question?
We're about to talk about that, right? Yes. So instant mashed potatoes is the same thing.
What
The
did you
bracha
hear
was
that
the same.
Moshe- Were you hear that Moshe was chayzer on us?
Rebelsky said that.
Yeah, very much. I heard of some of them.
Okay. So now the next group of things is something called dehydrated potatoes. Okay, dehydrated potatoes is three things. They call it slices, dices, and shreds. Okay, I'll just explain what they are. Slices are literally slices of potatoes. they look like thick potato chips. And dices are like these like little cubes, like a quarter of an inch, a half an inch size. Okay, like you might use them in a soup. Okay, the sliced potatoes they make dishes out of them, like with cheese and things like that. The cubes are like what you might find in a soup.
Home fries.
What do you say?
They even sell it in a container for home fries.
Good. Okay, and shreds is what you might see as hash browns. Like if you go to a restaurant, they serve you hash browns. Nobody cut the potatoes so thin like that. They look like these like squiggly like potato sticks. Okay, and they come out looking. They come out of the factory looking white, but then they fry them and they look brown. They're called, and in the middle they're called hash browns. Okay, so all those they're dehydrated. Okay, which means is what the company does is they cut them to size first, and then they blanch them, and then they dry them. Okay, blanching means is they dunk it into boiling water for a certain amount of time. And then after they take it out and they dry it, and once they dry it, then it doesn't need to be refrigerated or anything like that, and it's frozen. It stays perfectly fine as is. So in most factories, the blanching that they do makes it kamaycha ben drusoi. Okay, it doesn't make it fully cooked. It makes it kamaycha ben drusoi. So before I tell you what we do with kamaycha ben drusoi, you should just know there are some factories where it comes out completely edible. Okay, it comes out of that process completely edible. And then that comes into a shaila, which we'll talk about a little more in a second, about whether someone cooking it afterwards would be mistamik v'yafaloi, whether that would make it better. Okay, because you will cook it again later. Everyone's going to take it home and cook it more. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, but most places, it's just kamaycha ben drusoi. So the Ramah said, the din is very clear that if something is kamaycha ben drusoi, it's bishul akum. Okay, so everyone agrees that those slices and dices, if the yid is not part of the cooking, when it leaves the factory, it's bishul akum. But the Ramah says, but if a yid will finish it afterwards, then it won't be bishul akum. He could reverse it. Okay, he could isur hachozel hechsheru. He could turn it back into being not bishul akum. So there are hashkachas who say no problem. So we could certify it because we know. I mean, if a guy buys it, we don't care if he eats bishul akum. If a yid buys it, then he's and takes it home, or he takes it to a restaurant and uses it. It's used very much in restaurants. A yid will finish off the cooking over there.
If they know.
So we'll sell it. It'll be taka. It's bishul akum when we sell it. That's okay, because we know that whoever's going to need to is going to make it Bishul Yisroel when they finish it off. Okay, and there's the question on that is that there's a bunch of different scenarios. I'll tell you a couple of scenarios where That's not what's going to happen. Okay, it's not going to be finished off cooking by Yid afterwards. One is the dices get put into instant soups. Okay, there are some people who eat instant soups without cooking them at all. They just eat them. They just eat right without any water. They just eat the things right out of the package. Okay, or there's one person watched somebody do this on the plane. They had the instant soup on the plane, so they said they wanted to put hot water into it. So they said to the flight attendant, "Could you put hot water in? Could you get it for me?" Okay, so who did the cooking over here? If there's cooking, who did the cooking was the flight attendant. Okay, instead of you thought a Yid was going to do it at home, but the guy was on a plane and he had the flight attendant do it for him.
Same with mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes the same. Could be the same thing.
Sure not. I will. Instant soups.
Yeah.
No, but the potato shaboy, the person made it. The potato was oil shachmal. Someone made a diced potato. They cooked it until it was kamaycha ben so it was passably edible. It was bishul akum now. The question is, will the Yid save it later on and turn it back into bishul Yisroel? The potatoes as they were oil shachmal. They were just potatoes, So, and the truth is, it's not even clear if the hot water that you add to the soup makes it edible at all. Okay, it might not make it any more edible than it was. It might just be it's just the same as it was. It's just hot now and just moist. It may not make it a bit more edible. It's not even clear that does anything altogether. Okay, also. These diced potatoes go to companies that make canned soup. So the imagine you're the hashgacha at the canned soup company. You're the hashgacha there, and you're making a soup that has carrots and celery and all kinds of things that don't need Bishul Yisroel. And in comes package of diced potatoes with a hashgacha on it. So you say, my soup doesn't need Bishul Yisroel. Everything else I have is nechlachai. Everything is edible raw. The potatoes are coming with hashgacha. That's fine. I'm safe on those potatoes. So you don't make your canned soup Bishul Yisroel, even though it goes. So again, the cooking is being done by people. And last is this I saw. This was like surprising. We walked into a company that was making vodka out of potatoes, but instead of using real potatoes, excuse me, they didn't use real potatoes. They bought diced potatoes from a company that was, for whatever reason, they bought these diced potatoes and they came with hashgacha. Okay, so no one at the vodka company dreamt in a million years there hadn't be Bishul Yisroel in their vodka, but the vodka was basically they were selling vodka that was bishul akum. Okay, because it was coming in as potatoes. The potatoes were already bishul akum. Well, the hashgacha was counting on someone to finish off the cooking. Nobody was doing that in the vodka company. Nothing. They were just using it for starch. So anyhow, so all these things, I gave you a bunch of scenarios, okay? Are these likely? No, they're not very likely. The very small percentage of stuff that's going to end up happening like that. In 99% of the cases, the food is going to be Bishul Yisroel. The Yid's going to finish off at home. But it's very questionable whether to give hashgacha. The CRC decided a long time ago that we...
Even in caterers, where let's say they're going to make that filling, the potato that has the filling inside.
That's not these. That's instant potatoes. This is dehydrated potatoes.
The instant potatoes is the same ice.
No, I'm going to get to instant potatoes in a minute. No, they're different. The instant potatoes is a different quirk to it.
Okay.
You wait a minute. Just be patient. Okay. But so anyhow, the CRC decided a long time ago, as did many other hashgachas, that they wouldn't give hashgacha on these things unless they were Bishul Yisroel and they left the factory. Okay? And other hashgachas either say no problem, we're counting on the Yid to finish it, or they grandfathered in the old places that did it and won't give hashgacha to new places who do it. So again, this is a very fuzzy thing, and again, it's a big difference between one hashgacha and another potentially for this. Okay, next, before we get to the instant, next, which is related to this one, is canned potatoes. When you can something, the chachma, the I don't know, what you're trying to do is you put the food into the can, and you cook it inside the can in a retort. You cook it inside the can, and that destroys any pathogens that are in there. That's what you did for now. And since the can is sealed, nothing new can get into it, and therefore the can of food will last for 1,000,000 years. It'll never spoil because there's no microorganisms that could spoil it inside. And whatever spoilage that they did to beforehand is neutralized, so we're good. So it'll last forever. Okay, so
Forever.
okay, forever's a long time, but anyhow.
What do you think they had on the table?
Okay, maybe. So anyhow, so that's usually potatoes also. Okay, and potatoes they make this. They take these for some reason. They take these small potatoes, they peel them, they dunk them into the can, and then they cook the can. Everything that's in the can is cooked, And then you have these cooked potatoes, these little potatoes. Okay, caterers buy them, or people buy them and use them for. You don't usually use them as is. They usually brown them after. They fry them afterwards, and they make them into.
I know a shul that uses canned potatoes for their Shabbos cholent.
Correct. Okay, I'm coming to them. Don't worry. Not for them specifically, but yes. So they buy these, they fry them up, and then they serve them as potatoes that you might see at events. If there's nobody involved in the cooking at the factory, then these ones are 100% edible, and they're bishul. Okay, they're bishul. They're not kamachim ben josoy. They're 100% edible, and they're bishul. So. The first question. So the question is, some people will give hashgacha to accounting again on a yid finishing off the cooking when it gets at home, to frying it at home.
What?
So the first.
It's perfectly edible. How could they be simultaneously going to finish?
So the first part of the first part of the question is, what will happen if a yid would take it home, like caterers will do, and fry it up and brown it and make it better? Okay, the shaila of whether mitztamik v'yafaloi is included in what the Ramah said. When the Ramah said that a yid could finish off the cooking, that's enough to make it back to be Bishul Yisroel. Is that just because it had to be finished, the cooking, or even if it was fully cooked and he was mitztamik v'yafaloi, he made it even better? That's a shaila. It happens to be the CRC. Poskim said that it is okay. That's
Excuse me. Is anybody parked on Washington right here? There was one car.
Yeah.
We need you. We have a truck coming delivery. If you could do a quick move, just move it up to.
Nothing to do with the city, Chicago.
No, it's just us.
Okay, so that's the first. The first is whether mitztamik v'yafaloi is enough, and that, and the CRC said they would be making about that. Okay, but the second is
What's the shadow?
the Ramah says that if it's the guy made it kamach ben josoy and the yid finishes that Bishul Yisroel. But what happened if it was 100% cooked? And I made better beyond 100% cooked. It was fully edible, but I did something that made it even better beyond that. Is that also included what the Ramah says? Okay, but
So
we'll make on that.
How far?
What do you mean, how far?
How far does that go? Toast?
No, that's its own question. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that question. But this qualifies. Okay, this guy for sure makes it better. Yes.
What if you're not making something with it? You take it out and you warm it up, and you're eating.
Wrong car. I'm sorry. Lucid. Who has a Lucid? Anybody here? Sorry.
We're all lucid, but
If you take the can and you just boil it up as it is, and you serve it as boiled potatoes.
So you haven't done any. You haven't improved it at all.
Right.
You
and
just
you put
heated
a
it.
little extra.
No, that's nothing. So that doesn't count at all. That's zero. Okay, and then the second question is the same question we asked about the same point we brought up about the dehydrated potatoes, which is, should we be satisfied? Should we be confident that the person who's going to buy it is in fact going to do that, or is it going to be like the shul? They're just going to dump it into their cholent. They're not going to do anything more to it. Maybe the cholent is mistam v'yafaloi. Maybe. Or people, what? That's mistam v'yafaloi.
A potato from the cholent is definitely worth more than a.
More okay. Yeah. So maybe that is. And what about people who don't do it? Maybe we'll just eat it straight. Just eat it. What do you say? Therefore, what? How does that make a difference?
Why would it be in stock for yafla if you put it on the
So they think that
much better.
Potatoes
from the cholent.
The
potato. Take a potato from the cholent, which sat overnight cooking. It's
The
certainly
meat
much better than
is absorbed in the.
The cooking will have nothing to do with the cooking. It has to do with the
It's
other
softer.
stuff.
Different
okay, so you could debate that, but the question is, but people we'll have to think of scenarios of people using it without that, and whether people would give hashgacha to that. It's come up here also, and we wouldn't give hashgacha unless it was Bishul Yisroel leaving the factory. Okay, that's what came up for us. Okay.
Are you going to address if, let's say, we took over a factory? This is a MISO that happened. We took over a factory. We did our run, and the hashgacha before us did not kosher. They relied on us. To us, it was Bishul Akum. Them it wasn't. The question is, did we have to kosher? Because on our label it said the word Bishul Yisroel.
What? It should be obvious we have to kosher because it was Bishul Akum.
Well,
they had much It was a French fries company.
No.
French fries.
Okay, the French fries is a different question. But put your French fries for a second. For the other things, even they agreed that it left the factory Bishul Akum. They just figured that tomorrow someone's going to make a Bishul Yisroel and they get it at home. But the factory cooked the Bishul.
Everything that's served
Yes,
on the tray.
it was Bishul Akum. They just said tomorrow it's going to be kosher. Now for the French fries, it's different because the French fries, you're saying it didn't need Bishul Yisroel. It was not Rosh Hashanah. But we were going to call it Bishul Yisroel. We were telling people it's on a higher standard. Maybe we had the kashrus because of that.
Right.
Okay, I would think yes. I'm saying if we're telling people we're to this higher standard, that's different than this case where it was Pasha that left. It was Bishul Akum in the factory. Okay. Okay. Now for our last group,
those round potatoes, how are they different from French fries in terms of ola shulchan malachim?
Because these are plain potatoes. They're just cooked potatoes. They are ola shulchan malachim.
They go on a fancy dinner.
They are.
Fries.
Okay, so our last group is instant items. In 3 versions, it's the same thing: flakes, granules, and potato flour. It's all the same thing. And that is what you do is you take potatoes, you cut them up, and you blanch them in hot water, like last time. No, hot water. Blanch it in hot water. Usually, because these are bigger pieces, this is not what's going to be the dehydrated. These are bigger pieces. Usually, they're not even kamaycha ben Jerusalem when they leave this thing. But they are sometimes. Just pause that. Put that in your head for a second. If we're going to be counting on the fact that whatever we're going to talk about, why it should be mutter, if they were to be kamaycha ben Jerusalem at this point, what we're going to say later is not going to help. It would be usher. So, if you're counting on the fact that they're not kamaycha ben Jerusalem, which they're usually not, you have to taste them. Okay? You have to really find out if they're kamaycha ben Jerusalem or not. Okay, just something to put in your head. Or I'm saying you get so used to seeing things the same way every time, you don't even remember that that's why you were doing it. So anyhow, I'm just putting it in your head. Okay. Anyhow, so they're usually not kamaycha ben Jerusalem. Okay. Then from there, they go to this machine where they get cooked with steam. This device is like a long rectangular, I don't know,
Auger.
it's pot, which has in the middle of it a screw in the middle of it. Okay, and what happens is the potatoes fall on the left side, and the screw carries them over to the right side. Okay, through this like long rectangular tank. I don't know what you want to call it. And there's steam being blown into this tank the whole time. So let's say it takes 15 minutes to get from the left side to the right side. During that time, the potatoes are getting really cooked. Again, the blancher didn't even make them kamaycha ben Jerusalem, so not even at all edible. And in this tank, the auger is the screw part, but in this tank, whatever you want to call it, it's getting cooked. Okay, it's excuse me. Everybody cooks it the same way with live steam, and there's no water in that tank. Okay, the condensation drains out the bottom of the thing. Okay, so it's cooked in plain steam. After they come out, we'll get to the Bishul Akum in a second. We're just seeing how it works. So after it comes out of that machine, it's still these big pieces of potatoes. They get mashed up into mashed potatoes. Okay, like the employees in the plant eat those mashed potatoes. They just take them; they're 100% ready to go. The mashed potatoes are then made into a very thin layer that's sprayed onto a drum dryer. Drum dryer is a drum. Okay, it rotates, and inside of it is steam. And as you spray the potatoes onto it, the potatoes stick onto it. And by the time they get around to the end of they spray it over here.
How do you spray mashed potatoes? I'm so sorry, Joseph.
What?
How do you spray mashed potatoes?
You don't spray. You dribble on a layer of it. Call it what you want to. Not spray. You dribble on a layer of it. Okay, and as it sticks onto it, and as it goes around, the water boils out of it to the point that when it gets to the bottom, where there's a knife over here, a blade, it scrapes it off. Okay, so it comes out as this. But basically, you get this long sheet of dried potatoes coming out the other end.
It's like the reverse of ice cream. If you have an ice cream maker, it scrapes around.
I guess they both have scrapers. Okay, and so at the end, and then after this comes off as this big sheet, then you grind it up into potato flakes or into granules. That's even smaller pieces, or into potato flour, which is almost like the consistency of flour. It's not like what we call flour. It's the consistency of flour, and you use these things, depending on what you want to use, depending on what size you have and what you want to have it, you can make almost like mashed potatoes out of it. Like you could serve that in an event, you could serve, or yeshiva lunch, you could serve mashed potatoes. You could make Pringles out of it, a knish, the fillings that Sean was talking about beforehand, all those kind of things that have potatoes. That's what made out of these instant potato kind of stuff. Okay, so they're fully cooked. They leave the factory 100% cooked. So what we said beforehand about the Yid finishing off the cooking is not relevant to us. Okay, these things are 100% cooked. There's no possibilities of that. Okay, that's why I told you beforehand. Sometimes, they're fully cooked. So there's 3 possible reasons to think that these don't need Bishul Yisroel. The first is maybe instant potatoes are not Oler Shulchan Aruch. Okay, the caterers debated. Maybe it depended how fancy the caterers were. Debated whether they would serve instant mashed potatoes at a Shulchan Aruch. Would they serve it at a fancy event? Would they serve instant mashed potatoes? Or would they make them themselves? Okay. So some said yes, and some said, "Oh, yeah, of course I would, because I'd make potato logs and barekas and all kinds of other things like that, and stuffed whatever it is he was talking about. For that, I would use it. That I would use it even for Shulchan Aruch. Okay. Also, that the whole idea that maybe it's not Shulchan Aruch is a little bit questionable because they're dealing with the instant potatoes that have already been dried and turned into this powder. But before that, they were mashed potatoes. Okay, when they came out of the cooker, they were beautiful, regular mashed potatoes. They were cooked like any other mashed potatoes were. Okay, maybe degraded a little bit later, but basically they were just good old-fashioned mashed potatoes when they came out of there.
Well, they made it inedible, so you have Kashrus to start with.
So they didn't make it edible. They made it not oil shulchan aruch. They made it less oil shulchan aruch.
You can't eat it as is. It's just
you can't
put
eat
it
when?
in your mouth. It doesn't
Hydrated.
taste bad. I don't.
Oh, you can't eat it in the powdered form.
Yeah.
Oh, but you don't need cooking to make it more edible again. If you just put it into warm water, it does the same. Does the same trick. Becomes just as edible. But I thought you were saying something else, which someone did say, which is if it's not oil shulchan aruch after it's dried, but it was oil shulchan aruch beforehand, so maybe it's like the avkas recha. You undid the shulchan aruch. Okay, most people didn't go for that. Okay, there was people who thought like that. Then you undid the oil shulchan aruch. That's like a Okay, so one reason was that maybe it's not oil shulchan aruch. Okay, that wasn't such a strong reason to be made. A second is that over here we're cooking in live steam. I told you the real cooking happens in live steam, and the Ramah says that unless you cook with a fire, it's not considered to be, can't be bishul akum. And so some people understand that not cooking anything, as long as there's no fire there, you're good. So there's no fire here, it's being cooked with steam. Or the case that other people spoke about was cooked with, when you hot smoke the food. So it's cooked with smoke instead of being cooked with fire. So many believe that that's not considered to be, that's can't be bishul akum if it's cooked with live steam. But it's considered mu'ushan. What mu'ushan really means with cold smoke. With cold smoke. So there are those who would say it also means anything as long as but the Ramah sticks in the words like since there's no fire. I don't remember the exact words. So there's no fire here either. Okay, and other people say, come on, of course there's a fire. The steam is just the way to get the heat of the fire over here. Anyhow, that was a second possible reason to be makel, and the third is. It's made in this. I was having a hard time describing to you this interesting device, this big tank that has a screw in the middle of it, and there's this tshuva from Rav Nata Greenblatt writing over what Moshe told him that Moshe approved. That said is if you have food cooked in a factory, which is to say a situation where there's no possibility of chasnos. Okay, bishul akum is also because of chasnos. There's no possibility of chasnos in the factory. You have no connection to the person who cooked the food. Really, there should be no issur bishul akum. However, since it's loy plug, just like once bishul akum is usher, all bishul akum is usher. So Moshe said there's only a loy plug when it's similar to the way you cook at home. This kind of machine, nobody has a machine like this. It's not just a big pot. It's this unusual, strange pot that's not considered bishul. That's not including the loy plug, and it's mutter. Okay.
That's not like at first.
That what?
At first, there was no difference how you cook it.
And rather.
Any companies.
Anything cooked in the factory.
That's what the first ones, right?
Yeah. Different gears is what Ramosha said. Right. First is the most makel.
Okay, so he's saying there's never bishul akum.
Never bishul akum factory.
Never bishul akum factories. Okay, wonderful. Okay.
No one's marrying Betty Cracker.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's good news. That make life a lot easier, right? You know. They should maybe advertise that, and someone who needs a Rav Machshir,
Which is what they told Bishul Yisroel. That's the famous Bishul Yisroel.
That what?
That someone told them over, which is not in the later Cholak, and they took it out. Yeah.
That what?
That he says, now I understand why there's such intermarriage in America.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you something about that after. Okay, so anyhow, so the just to tell you where things hold about this, the OU says they wouldn't rely on the second or third reasons independently, but they would do it together, which they often come together. If you cook in live steam, it's almost sort of built in that when you cook with live steam, it's going to be in a strange piece of equipment, not like you have in your house, right? Nobody in their house has things that cook with live steam. It sort of goes together often. The CRC said they'd be makel for either of those reasons, okay? So cooking live steam was good enough for us, and like that. Okay, so I'll just. What do you say?
Live steam is fine.
Okay, I think Minchas Yitzchak you have to have both.
Of some shit that the creative argues on the whole there's no mission by this process.
So the Birkei Yosef is similar to Rav Moshe. It's almost Rav Moshe.
And now you begin the Birkei argues the whatever that was. The whole that no, it's all this just Palta, this mission Palta.
Right. Right, so that Birkei Yosef is almost Rav Moshe's similar. They have a lot of similarities. Okay, so I just put. I don't know if you caught this. That potato flour is not like wheat flour and other flours that there are. Sorghum flour. I don't know. All other flours are made from raw items. Potato flour is not. Potato flour is made from cooked potatoes. It's not like potato starch. Potato flour is made from cooked potatoes, which may have all kinds of complications and shilas of bishlakum and other ingredients and things like that, as opposed to regular, other strange barley flour is not made from cooked things, and those are very simple. They're good ones. Potato flour and potato starch is not like that. Okay, I had some other things. We'll stop here.